Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are at the moment. Thank you for joining us at this CBM proposal process feedback webinar. I'm here with Colleen Fleming, Anna Emery, Gina Serino, various representatives from the working group for this CBM proposal process here to give you an update on what's been going on in the working group, as well as take any questions you have at the end. So if I may introduce you all to the working group and go on with the opening. So please go ahead, Colleen.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. It's really nice to have everyone on the line. We appreciate you taking time. I know everyone is busy. So we really appreciate you taking time to have this webinar with us. Before we get started, I don't know, is there a way that people can somehow signify whether or not they've used the new process at all?
Let me see. I have a few hands going up. Kelsey Marr from North California World Trade Center, Leslie Rankin from World Trade Center International, and James McManus from Cincinnati World Affairs Council.
Fantastic. So just a few people have used this, so I wanted to give you a little bit of context, and I wanted to know who was on the line. So I just want to let everyone know how this whole thing came about and how it's kind of evolved and all the things that we've gone through to refine this process. And really the whole reason for doing this was to make people's lives easier, not more difficult. And some of the feedback we got, we heard, we listened to it, and what the purpose of this really is to help CBM build a library of statements of interest and proposals so that it doesn't take hours and hours for small teams of people to try and sell their city to the National Program Agency and the State Department. So basically, our deputy director mandated that we start a committee, and thanks to Gina for leading this effort, because she has really spearheaded this effort and done a great deal of work organizing meetings, taking notes, refining everything over and over, and just keeping a smile on her face. And she's also spent a lot of time, just as my colleague Amy Cardis has done, reaching out to a lot of CBMs. We had a lot of conversations at the national meeting. Amy Dove has worked on this, editing documents and trying to refine this so that it really is a process that shouldn't take a lot of time for the initial statement of interest. And once you build that proposal library, you will also, it shouldn't take that much time to submit proposals either, because you'll have everything in a record, in a template, and in a form that people will want to read and are going to read. So one of the really important things to remember here is that what we're looking for in this process is a concise template, the wow factors, the things that stand out in your cities. And so if you look at the statement of interest template, you will see that there's a place for themes, and those should be no more than 2 to 4 themes, very concise. Start with a verb, give us some action. What are you going to do in your city? And the reason that those themes are so important is because we do different themes in each of the cities that our groups go to. And so if we have repetition on those themes, then we need to decide, well, San Francisco will cover this theme and we'll have Raleigh cover another theme rather than what they've submitted in their statement of interest. And that way also, when it's time to write the proposal, the NPA can tell you that we'd like you to focus on a different theme. Could you focus on this theme, or could you just focus on these two themes rather than these four? So the second thing I'd like to say is the bullet point list of resources. We really want this in bullet point form, and really it should be 4 or 5 bullet points. And you'll see in the example that because this is a volunteerism project, that there are volunteer activities. But we have moved, those activities and home hospitality and cultural activities into an optional space on the statement of interest. So they just so happen to be in this statement of interest because that's what the program is focused on. But it really should be concise bullet points. And really, at this point, less is more. So for those people who've been doing this a long time, this is really something that should take you 10, 15 minutes to say, this is the program. Oh, these are the really wow ideas that we have in our city that we could cover. And if you have a new person, I know that a lot of people use interns to help them write these things. Sit down with your interns and tell them what those wow factors are. If you've been doing this a long time, you know these things. So it should take you 10, 15 minutes to come up with a list of 5 things and put them down in just brief bullet points. And I say that because if an NPA or the State Department is getting 15 to 20 proposals sometimes for specific projects, it takes a lot of time to read prose and to read things in different formats. So having a succinct, concise format helps people to really look at this very quickly and make some initial decisions. Now, the proposal that follows, if the NPA asks you to write a proposal, will of course take a little bit more time. However, I had a long conversation this morning with Gina in Pensacola, who is really great at drumming up business. She gets a lot of business. She writes concisely. She writes in the active voice, and she knows how to get people's attention. And so I say this because we, again, want you to use the template and not to go over, is it 3 pages? Approximately 3 to 4 pages for your proposal. So really, less is more. And I know that it takes some practice to write concisely. But, those of us who work in the State Department, when we send something up to the Secretary's office, we're allowed 1 bullet point. We have to say it all in 1 sentence. So, we've gotten very good at this, or maybe not. But, our paper goes through lots and lots of channels before it meets the muster of the front office. So I say all this because we really want you to use the templates, and if you fill out the top part and have it ready, then you have half of it done already. So in the statement of interest, you fill in the top part and then you change the title and the dates. You have half the document finished right there. The other thing that's important is to pay attention to the timelines. The timelines that we've developed are maybe not logical to everyone who looks at this and says, oh, I need more time, or I want this, or I want that. These timelines were developed because we have to start where the project starts, and that's at the post. And so we have a certain amount of time that we have to get information back to our post so that if they do give us feedback on something, that they have time to give us that feedback. So we've developed these timelines and we've gone over them in our office, and
if there seems to be a little bit of feedback on the phone, you could mute if you're not speaking.
And so there's a lot of reasons for those timelines. And if you ever have any questions about those timelines, please feel free to pick up the phone and call me, and I will talk to you about it. Please don't email me, just call me. I love to talk on the phone. So, but there is a reason for those. And so, again, I just wanted to reiterate that we appreciate everyone testing this out and getting us feedback. It's optional at this point, but we encourage people to try it out. It's evolved quite a bit from its first iteration. It was much more detailed, much longer, and what we've tried to do is cut it back and make it really concise. And so the statement of interest is particularly concise. If you can also reach out to the NPAs, and the NPAs will continue to reach out to specific CBMs, and they may not ask you for a statement of interest. They're just going to ask you for a proposal because they plan on sending that group to that city, and they have very specific reasons for doing that based on resources, location, population. I mean, the way we design these programs includes a lot of different types of diversity, and that's geographic, topographic, the population there, the size of the city, the kind of diversity across the country. So there's many, many reasons why NPAs and State Department choose certain cities and will go back to certain cities that they know have done really outstanding work on a proposal. So I'm going to close there and turn it over to Anna. And
Anna, you want to talk on behalf of using this process as a CBM?
Yes. So sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I just lost our internet just shut down for a second, so I had to scramble to get back in. So I just lost the last 2 minutes of whatever was going on. But yeah, so to try to just go off maybe what Gina was referring to regarding the benefits of using the statement of interest, is that kind of what we're going off of?
Yes,
yes.
Yes, the benefits.
Yep, that's where we are.
Okay, perfect. Well, that I can speak to. So again, good morning and good afternoon to everybody. This is Anna Emery calling from the World Affairs Council in Dallas. So my history with the statement of interest kind of goes back to last fall when the pilot was being rolled out, and kind of really personally just started using the statement of interest this January. And we've probably written close to only 5 to 7, but had about a 75% success rate, which is really great. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the statement of interest, or I think is beneficial, is whether you're a small CBM and volunteer-based or you're a slightly larger CBM and staff-driven, we all know it's kind of difficult to program and write proposals at the same time, either because you're having to go outside the office and go to meetings with groups, or, and that prevents you from obviously writing proposals. So with the new statement of interest in the bullet point format, kind of what Colleen was saying earlier, is that it should take only 15 minutes. And so with that, you're kind of able to kind of get proposals out while you have groups in town. And that's kind of saves time and energy for everybody involved. And it's also something that I think is a lot easier for interns to be able to do as well. They don't have as long of a narrative that they have to maybe grasp or understand in a short amount of training time. And it kind of lets you reuse some of the same proposals, so to speak, in a more, I guess, roundabout manner.
Anna, this is Amy Dove with the State Department. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, in terms of using this new process, how has the communication with MPAs been? I know that was one of the concerns that CBMs had expressed in terms of previous working methods.
I will say we have received a slightly higher response rate from MPAs whenever we do reach out in this regard. I will say that's really, we haven't really necessarily had that being an issue in the past, but so I guess we're kind of lucky in that regard. So yes, I would say either our response from MPAs working with them with this new proposal process has been about the same or better. We haven't really seen any negative, anything negative come about from it in regards to response time and whatnot.
All right. Any questions for Anna? I do not see any questions pop up. Again, you can feel free to ask questions as we go along, but we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. So we would like any and all questions to be saved at the end. So, all right, we're good, Anna. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I hope to ask Gina Serena from the graduate school to give us her topic on survey results, and we can go from there. Gina, please.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Gina with Graduate School. And Anna, thank you so much for speaking on behalf of your experience using the statement of interest as a CBM, and pointing out that it would be a useful tool for both large and small CBMs so they can focus on being with the group and programming while writing proposals. I am going to talk briefly about our survey results. If you guys remember, at the national meeting, we advertised that there was going to be a survey that was linked to the Global Ties newsletter, right? And we had several participants, CBM participants, complete the survey, and we asked for feedback about each step of the process, the statement of interest, the proposal, the timeline. We asked for positive and negative feedback. So it was really an opportunity for CBM to express their concerns and their objectives in a written format to the whole committee. So we analyzed the results, and in sum, we came up with a few main takeaways. And the four main ones were that we realized how flexible everybody needs to remain during this process and just in programming in general. But to try not to be super rigid about any of these processes, and that goes for the MPAs, the CBMs, and OIV, because there are so many different variables when we're dealing with posts, and we don't know when they're going to get back to us. Sometimes it's timely, sometimes it's not, and most of the time it's out of our hands. So please remain flexible. Communication is also another main key takeaway. If this is mostly on behalf of, I think, the NPA, where if they can't get back to a CBM in a timely manner, they need to communicate that to everybody that they're working with, in addition to the OIV. We did find a lot of incorrect information in the feedback in the survey. People addressing issues that had already been resolved, and because we did start this process a long time ago, and there have been many iterations of the statement of interest and of the proposal. So we've been receiving feedback for several months, probably over 8 months now, and we have addressed many issues along the way, and we have come out with new iterations of this process. So a lot of people were still working on the premise of old information, and that was one of the biggest takeaways from the survey. So more education is needed, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. Deviation from the timeline, again, this is a big NPA issue where, again, if they're not going to be able to get something done, or if they're going to decide to work on a project extra early because they have a super busy quarter, that's also something that needs to be communicated with all parties involved. This isn't really on the CBMs, it's more on the NPAs, where if an NPA is planning to submit a proposal to the State Department a month early, they should let the CBMs know. So moving forward, onto the next slide, I wanted to just cover some clarification that we realized was either miscommunicated or misread in some way over the last 8 months since we originally started to work on this process. And like I said, we've rolled out, soft roll out a few iterations to begin to get feedback from CBMs, and somehow some of those old versions stuck. The most recent documents for the statement of interest, the proposal, the timeline, and the FAQs are all on the Global Ties website. Please, please go to that website and download all of those documents. There are even mock-up proposal and mock-up statement of interest. So whatever you've seen in the past, that's probably old information. This has been on the Global Ties website now for about 2 months, but yeah, please go, and if you want information about where exactly to find it, please contact me, or actually just contact Global Ties offline. There was some misunderstanding that we learned from the survey about whether MPAs will continue to reach out to the CBMs asking for proposals or statements of interest for certain projects. And the answer is yes. The MPAs will continue if they are interested in a certain city because of their location or their theme or their field that they excel in. The MPAs will absolutely continue to reach out to those cities. There was also some misunderstanding about people were hesitant in sending a statement of interest as opposed to a full proposal because they thought it wasn't enough information. It was just a statement of interest, and they would, they indicated that they were hesitant because why should I send 1 page when I could send 10 pages of all of our resources? And that, look at how much I can show. It does not help your chances to get selected if you just send in a statement of interest. Like Colleen said, less is more. More information doesn't help. So do never think that the statement of interest will put you at the bottom of the pile. In fact, the NPA will probably appreciate that they don't have to pour over a lot of information. The NPAs work on a specific timeline. I'm on to the next. I'm on to D now. The NPA's main deadline is with the OIV. So if the CBM submits their statement of interest 3 months in advance, we just want to give you a heads up now that do not expect to hear anything back quickly from the NPA. We'll put that in a file, and we probably wouldn't get to it on behalf of the NPA until probably a few weeks before our deadline with the OIV. So if you don't hear feedback quickly from the NPA, if you send in a statement of interest early, don't be alarmed and don't think they're blowing you off. They probably just have other projects that are coming up sooner. There was a lot of feedback that people would send a statement of interest in and then not hear for a month. We have communicated with the NPAs that they should at least reply and say, thank you, we've received your statement of interest. We'll be looking at it later. But don't expect a thorough feedback until closer to when the NPA's deadline is with the OIV. There was also misunderstanding about if a CBM submits a statement of interest and then the NPA subsequently requests a proposal. A lot of CBMs thought they were chosen at that point as an official CBM for the project. But that's not how it works. The NPA is going to be asking for approximately 5 proposals. And as we know, usually there's only 3 cities in a project. And sometimes one city's already been chosen, so maybe the MPA is even just looking for 2 cities at that point. So you could be asked to send a statement of interest, and then you can even be asked to send a proposal. But that does not mean until you hear from the MPA that we are moving forward with your CBM for this project. So there was some ill feelings from some CBMs who thought, they spend a lot of time filling out the proposal in addition to the statement of interest, and then thought they were somehow misguided. But that's not really how the process works. A big one here is F, to check ORDIV for the status of the city selections. For those of you who please look at ORDIV on every single project before you start working on it, whether it's writing a statement of interest or a proposal. The MPAs are supposed to, and we are continuously trying to enforce this as best we can, to indicate whether or not these cities have been selected for a certain project or not. So to save you a lot of time and anguish, go first to ORDIV and find out whether or not the cities have been chosen. And it's our job to make sure the MPAs are doing this on their end, because the tool is useless if both parties aren't using it. There was a lot of feedback also that the turnaround time for when the project is going to be arriving in the United States and when the CBM is notified that they've been chosen for a project has been shortened, and now the CBMs don't have enough time to work on a project as they did before. But this hasn't changed at all, and I don't know where the misconception comes in. It's always the deadline for the MPA to the OIV is 1 month in advance for SCPs and 2 months for MRPs and RPs. That hasn't changed. And so when the MPA can tell the CBM when they've been chosen, that has not changed at all. So I don't know why there was so much feedback that the turnaround time seems dramatically shortened. And finally, the process is optional. As you know, this is an optional process. The statement of interest, the proposal, it's being implemented to help you guys. Just a few things on the formatting that people had sent us feedback in the survey, and it was based on old information, is that the statement of interest, as Colleen said, we are asking for bullet points, not a narrative. And that's great for you guys because a narrative is a lot more lengthy to write and to think about and how to structure a sentence. Bullet points are simple to write and simple to read, so we're sticking with that. Statement of interest at one point a long time ago was 14 points. We've changed that to 12-point font, I don't remember, October or something. So that's 12-point font. And on the proposal, the cultural activities are optional. Before we had it as something that we wanted to make sure you guys listed, but we got feedback that you don't really know what cultural activities are going to be happening in 3 months from now. So, you were frustrated. So we agree. We made that an optional thing. If there's a major event going on, you can include it, but I'm sure you wouldn't know about, sports games or anything that far in advance. So does anybody have questions about these clarifications?
I have one question here. They ask, is it indicated anywhere if the post has already chosen cities?
So the post makes recommendations periodically, but we do not ask the post for city recommendations. The only reason a post would make a city recommendation is because they also have specific resources or contacts there that they want this group to meet with. We actually discourage the post from making city suggestions, because that's really the expertise of the NPAs in conjunction with and collaboration with State Department here in Washington. So if the Post is making a suggestion like that, it's for an extremely good reason.
And this is Amy Curtis. Two things just to piggyback on what Gina said about that checkbox. We really are going to try to make sure that, or help MPAs to remember to use that, because that information is shared from OIV to the MPAs, and they can check the box saying cities have already been selected. I also think that the Post guiding or making suggestions happens on on-demand projects, maybe more because of the nature of the project. But I think in combination of this new process and more training, hopefully that you'll be given that information as soon as possible if cities have been selected.
All right.
Okay, we'll have more time for Q&A at the end, but I just want to get through these slides. The next slide is more for your reference. I'm not going to really go into all of these details. This is so if you want to download this presentation, you will have an idea of the type of communication that we're having with the NPAs and the guidelines that we're asking them to follow, and for them to be accountable, as well as the CBMs and OIV and everybody involved in this entire process. So these are reminders and guidelines for the MPAs that will help you and the OIV and everybody to keep on track and to keep in communication. So let's just move on to the mock-up statement of interest. There was a lot of feedback in this survey about how to write an effective statement of interest, because people felt insecure that if they just sent a statement of interest, they wouldn't be chosen because they didn't have enough room, enough space to express everything that they could say about their city. So this mock-up statement of interest will hopefully enlighten you guys a little bit as to what you can do when you write a statement of interest. So, Yvonne, can you open up the comment boxes, please?
Sure.
You should be able to just open up the doc and show all the comments at once. This top one is a big one for me personally. I can't tell you how many proposals I get or statements of it or proposals, and it just starts out with resources. And then I put it in a folder, and I have no idea who sent it to me, what their email address is, what their phone number is. All I know is the CBM it's from and the project it's from. Then I have to go through my emails from 3 months ago and figure out who sent this to me. So this is super important. It seems really obvious, but your name, your CBM, your title, your email, and your phone number on the statement of interest, right on there, not just in the email. So please, this is step number one in an effective statement of interest. So the next one is just a quick statistic here about why this city is good for this project. 32.5% of Rochester residents volunteer. That's a really high number. I want to know more. Let's read more. So this CBM outlined project themes. She's the one who actually thought of these themes because she knows her city the best, and she knows that there were volunteer opportunities for seniors, for young people, for people who are disabled. And so she said, multi-generational volunteerism, that's a good one for our city. She knew about a great workshop that could be available in her city. And she could also think of many, many different NGOs that she could have networked with. So she herself came up with 3 different themes that off the top of her head thought would be effective for her city. So moving down, bullet points. Super easy to read. Boom, boom, boom. It took me 10 minutes to read this, and I was convinced that I wanted to go with her city. Another way to ensure effective proposal or effective statement of interest is to provide unique resources. What does your city have that nobody else has? What have I never heard of? You're going to open my eyes to, and I just wanted that I've never heard of. So, this, for example, in this statement of interest, the CBM gave us a professor's name who won an actual prize for the work that she was doing in the exact field of this project. This caught my eye. I wanted to hear more, and it was very unique. So, a special event. Sorry, I'm moving back up now. Special event was happening in her city. Either that, or she could have created a special event geared towards this project. Sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit. Yeah. So her CBM was having a volunteer appreciation event that coincided with when my group was going to be there. So perfect. That is something that's going to grab my attention and going to be unique to that city. Now I know this is long shot for most scenarios, but it's an example of what could be happening that, you know, that could really strike the interest of an MPA. The volunteer activity, as Colleen said, this was a volunteer project, so we appreciate the fact that she included a volunteer activity. But just saying volunteer activity doesn't really help us or make us, you know, swayed one way or another to go with the CBM. So if you have an example, a volunteer activity doing X, Y, Z alongside of other Americans, you know, working towards the same activity, then we do want to hear it, but just volunteer doesn't help. Unique resources. And then the dates and availability. That's another thing that's going to be a huge factor in whether or not the MPA is going to be able to choose your city or not. So that's a no-brainer. We need to know that. So does anybody have questions about this mock-up statement of interest? Okay.
Yeah,
going
no
on
question.
to the next slide, just a few other tips. And a lot of them are repetitive from the last slide. So if you could provide unique resources, indicate specific areas of expertise in that field, and that would be your themes. Create themes. Okay, well, that's duplicate. We like to see interactive activities. We know the group gets very tired of sitting, you know, at a table all day long. So the more interactivities, the better. Entice the reader to want to know more about your city and what you can offer. This doesn't have to tell the whole story. It just has to tell the first sentence of the story. You don't need to put background information about a resource unless it is directly relevant to this project. Quality over quantity, which is basically what Colleen said, less is more. We would like to see a variety of sectors, so don't just give us all NGOs or all government institutions. We want to see a variety. Name names, like I said in the mock-up statement of interest. If you have an expert in your city, somebody that's been recognized in the field that the project is about, we want to hear the names. We want specifics. What did they do? How are they recognized? You know, we want specifics. But what you should veer away from, though, is general information, historical information, anything that's filler. We don't need filler. Vague resources, and we don't really need web links either, because we can always just Google it. So don't even spend your time doing that. And that is it. That is all we have. So we'd like to open it up to Q&A for our panelists. We have OIV, we have me, Global Ties, and we have Anna from a CBM. So you can ask us questions on behalf of any of these entities.
So let's give it a moment here. I'm sure there must be a few questions here.
Amy Dove from the State Department. I'd just like to add to what all has been said thus far is that this is a work in progress. It's something that the committee has been working on for a while and has been feeding in the input that it's gotten from the field and all the stakeholders. And the reason that it's optional right now is because we still want folks to try it and see how it's working and come back to the committee at the end of about 6 months or something along those lines. So we can assess whether or not it's meeting its objectives of improving communication flows, streamlining processes, creating standardization across the board, and is, as Colleen mentioned at the top of the call, lightening people's workloads. So we hope that you will start using this if you haven't already, and be prepared to give us some feedback about how it's working for you.
And we would hear from Global Ties. We'd like to remind you that if you have any other questions that you think of later on, as you think of it throughout the day, you're free to message us, email us with those questions, or email Amy Cardis or even Gina from the graduate school. Yeah, I'm not seeing any further questions here. I guess you must have explained it very thoroughly. So want to take another moment or two, that's fine, but here.
Yvonne, will the
One question here. Someone's typing, so they need a second.
Were you going to say something?
Just, Yvonne, will the presentation be available on your website?
Yes, so after this webinar is over, I will be giving out a link to the recording to the presentation, a copy of this PowerPoint, and any of the documents that we use, the mock-up SOI, basically. And we will be posting this on a Global Ties website as well, so stay tuned for that. Yes. Someone just asked this question if we will be sending out a link to that. Yes, we will be. Just waiting here for someone to finish typing their question. And here we go. Here is a question/comment. I am uncomfortable giving a name in advance because I never call resources to say, hey, I am writing a statement of interest. Are you interested in being listed? That won't happen, so I don't want to write in a statement of interest or a proposal that it will. Any comments on that?
Go ahead. Well, my initial response is that you don't have to write the actual name, but you could say, there's an expert, he won an award doing this, he teaches a class doing this, his students have done this.
He's worked with us before.
Yes, he's worked with us before. If you don't feel comfortable writing the name, you don't have to, but we know that this is a statement of interest and that we're not holding you to it. The proposal, we're not holding you to it. We know the drill. And of course, we would never hold anybody to any name that they put down, because we know that you have not contacted them yet, and it's just an idea. And I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say.
I would just say that, the general idea is you're showing the scope of things that you think you could put together, or, the range of things you think you could put together that are responsive to the project theme or project objectives. And if in the end, you're not able to get this specific resource, but you can get something that's similar or comparable or a replacement, then great. The idea is to kind of give the MPAs and the statement of interest a general idea of either contacts you've already or resources you've already worked with, or resources you think are a reasonable bet you could get.
Right. And sometimes the MPA just appreciates your ideas and shows us that you really understand the project, the objectives, and what we're trying to accomplish. So if you have a resource that does something that we would love to have in theory, that shows us that, you know, you're on the right track. Yes, let's go with something along those lines, as opposed to throwing something at us that's totally off left field. Then we'll say, well, you know, this isn't really what we're trying to get at. So even the idea helps us to understand what your line of thinking is.
All right, if there are no more questions, then I would like to thank everyone that attended this webinar. A huge thank you to the working group. I know they've been hard at work for this for a very long time, trying to nail all the details down, just to get a solid product out there that will hopefully help any and all of the CBMs. So thank you all for joining us here today. And with that, I will now end the webinar. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.